The moment a powerful man becomes jealous is the moment he discovers what truly matters to him. Vincent Moretti would never have admitted that statement was true. At 38 years old, he had built an empire that stretched across several states, managed thousands of employees, and commanded respect everywhere he went. People watched their words around him. Executives waited weeks for a meeting with him. Politicians called him personally. Yet despite all of that influence, there was one person living under the same roof as him whom he had barely noticed for nearly 2 years. Her name was Naomi Carter. Every morning, Naomi arrived before sunrise. Every evening, she was among the last to leave. She helped maintain the massive estate that sat on more than 20 acres outside Chicago. She made sure every room looked perfect, every detail was handled, and every guest felt welcome. Most people in the household appreciated her kindness. Vincent rarely looked in her direction. It was not because he disliked her. It was because his attention was always somewhere else. Meetings. Contracts. Travel. Responsibilities. Naomi was simply part of the background of his life, like the paintings on the walls or the fountains in the gardens. At least that was what he believed. One Thursday afternoon, Vincent returned unexpectedly from a business trip. A meeting had been cancelled, and for the first time in weeks, he arrived home before sunset. As he stepped through the front entrance, he noticed something unusual. Laughter. It was not the polite laughter of guests. It was genuine laughter. Warm laughter. The kind that filled a room. Vincent followed the sound toward the back courtyard. There, beneath strings of decorative lights hanging above a stone walkway, stood Naomi. She was laughing so hard she had placed a hand over her mouth. Across from her stood Ethan Brooks, Vincent's longtime bodyguard. Ethan was usually serious. Calm. Professional. Yet now he was smiling in a way Vincent had never seen before. The two seemed completely absorbed in their conversation. Ethan said something else. Naomi laughed again. Then Ethan reached over and gently brushed a leaf from her shoulder. The gesture lasted less than a second. Vincent felt something strange tighten in his chest. He stopped walking. For reasons he could not explain, he continued watching. Naomi looked different than he remembered. Her dark eyes seemed brighter. Her smile seemed impossible to ignore. The late afternoon sunlight reflected through the trees and illuminated her face. Vincent frowned. Why was he noticing this now? Ethan spotted him first. The bodyguard immediately straightened his posture. Naomi turned and quickly lowered her eyes. Good afternoon, sir, Ethan said. Vincent nodded. His gaze lingered on Naomi for a brief moment before returning to Ethan. What is so funny? He asked. Ethan smiled. Just a story about getting lost during a snowstorm a few years ago. Naomi nodded politely. It was embarrassing, she said softly. Vincent stared at her for a second longer than necessary. Then he turned and walked inside without another word. The conversation should have ended there. It should have disappeared from his mind within minutes. Instead, it followed him throughout the evening. During dinner, he found himself wondering what they had been talking about. While reviewing reports in his office, he caught himself thinking about Naomi laughing. Before going to bed, he looked out his window and noticed Ethan crossing the courtyard below. An unexpected irritation surfaced. The next morning, Vincent arrived in the kitchen earlier than usual. He told himself he wanted coffee before a conference call. Yet when he entered, he immediately looked around for Naomi. She was standing near the counter organizing supplies. For the first time, he realized he had no idea how old she was, where she came from, or what dreams she might have. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, Vincent Moretti found himself wanting to know. Over the next few days, something changed inside Vincent, although he refused to admit it. He began noticing details he had somehow missed for nearly 2 years. Every morning, Naomi arrived carrying a worn leather bag and a travel mug that looked several years old. She greeted everyone with the same warm smile regardless of their position. She remembered birthdays, asked about sick relatives, and quietly helped whenever someone was struggling. Most surprising of all, she never seemed to expect anything in return. One afternoon, Vincent was reviewing reports in his office when he glanced out the window and saw Naomi helping one of the gardeners carry several heavy boxes across the courtyard. The gardener was nearly 70 years old. Naomi could have easily walked past and continued her own work, but instead she spent 20 minutes helping him finish. Vincent watched from above without understanding why the scene stayed in his mind long after she disappeared. Later that evening, he found himself asking the estate manager an unusual question. "How long has Naomi worked here?" The manager looked surprised. "Almost 2 years, sir." Vincent nodded. "Has she always been reliable?" The manager actually laughed. "Reliable does not begin to describe her. Half this place would fall apart without her." That answer bothered Vincent more than it should have. How had someone so important to the daily operation of his home remained invisible to him for so long? The next morning, he entered the kitchen again before sunrise. Naomi was arranging fresh flowers near the breakfast room entrance. She looked up when he entered. "Good morning, Mr. Moretti." Vincent paused. "Good morning." For a moment neither spoke. Then Naomi returned to her work. Vincent stood there awkwardly before finally leaving with his coffee. The entire exchange lasted less than 30 seconds, yet he spent most of the morning thinking about it. Things became even more confusing when Ethan seemed to appear around Naomi constantly. Vincent noticed them talking in the staff hallway. He noticed them laughing near the garage. One afternoon, he walked through the library and spotted Ethan handing Naomi a cup of coffee. She smiled gratefully before taking it. A strange irritation immediately surfaced inside him. That evening, during a security briefing, Vincent interrupted Ethan twice for minor mistakes that normally would not have mattered. Ethan eventually raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right, boss?" Vincent answered immediately. "Of course." Ethan studied him for a moment but said nothing. 2 days later, Vincent entered the courtyard and froze when he saw Naomi and Ethan sitting together during a break. They were sharing a small container of cookies. Naomi was laughing again. Ethan looked completely relaxed. Vincent felt that same tightening sensation in his chest. Without thinking, he walked directly toward them. Both stood when they noticed him approaching. "Sir," Ethan said. Vincent looked at the container. "Enjoying yourselves?" Ethan exchanged a confused glance with Naomi. "Just taking a break." Naomi seemed slightly uncomfortable. Vincent noticed that for the first time. Before he could say anything else, his phone rang. A major business partner needed him immediately. Frustrated, he turned and walked away. Behind him, the conversation between Ethan and Naomi stopped completely. Later that night, Vincent sat alone in his office staring at the city lights beyond the estate grounds. For the first time in years, a business problem was not occupying his thoughts. Instead, he found himself wondering a question he could no longer ignore. Why did the idea of Ethan getting closer to Naomi bother him so much? The question followed Vincent everywhere during the next week. No matter how busy he became, his attention kept returning to Naomi and Ethan. He told himself it was simple curiosity. He told himself he was merely observing people who worked on his estate. Yet deep down, he knew that explanation made no sense. One rainy afternoon, Vincent called Ethan into his office to discuss upcoming travel arrangements. The meeting should have taken 10 minutes. Instead, Vincent found himself asking an unexpected question. "How well do you know Naomi?" Ethan looked surprised. "Naomi?" Vincent nodded casually. "You seem to spend a lot of time talking with her." Ethan leaned back slightly. "She is a good person. easy to talk to. The answer immediately irritated Vincent. That was not what I asked. Ethan studied him carefully. Why are you interested? Vincent looked away toward the window. I am not interested. Ethan almost smiled. If you say so, boss. The conversation ended there, but Ethan left the office looking far more thoughtful than when he entered. Over the following days, Vincent began paying attention to details he previously ignored. Naomi often stayed late after everyone else had left. She regularly helped employees outside her responsibilities. More importantly, she never spoke about herself. Everyone seemed to know her, yet nobody appeared to know much about her life. The realization made Vincent curious. One evening, while returning from a meeting downtown, Vincent noticed a light still on inside the estate's administrative building. Most employees had gone home hours earlier. As he walked closer, he saw Naomi sitting alone at a desk. Papers were spread around her. She looked exhausted. Vincent entered quietly. Naomi immediately stood. Mr. Moretti. I did not realize you were back. Vincent glanced at the paperwork. You are still working? Just finishing inventory reports. He checked the wall clock. It was nearly 9 o'clock. That could wait until tomorrow. Naomi smiled politely. I prefer leaving things finished. For a moment neither spoke. Then Vincent noticed something unusual. Beside the papers sat several medical bills. Naomi quickly covered them with a folder. The movement was small, but Vincent saw it. Everything all right? He asked. Naomi hesitated. Yes, sir. The answer came too quickly. Vincent sensed she was hiding something, but before he could ask another question, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and immediately looked worried. I am sorry. I need to take this. Vincent nodded and stepped away. As he left the room, he heard her voice soften. Do not worry. I will figure something out. The words stayed with him throughout the night. The next afternoon brought an even bigger surprise. Ethan approached Vincent privately. There is something you should know. Vincent looked up from his desk. What is it? Ethan closed the door behind him. Do you remember that assignment you gave me months ago? Vincent immediately remembered. Nearly 6 months earlier, he had quietly instructed Ethan to conduct a background check on Naomi after noticing irregular gaps in her employment records. The investigation had never produced any concerning results, and Vincent had forgotten about it. Ethan's expression grew serious. I received new information this morning. Vincent sat forward. What kind of information? Ethan placed a folder on the desk. Enough to tell you that Naomi Carter may not be who everyone believes she is. Vincent stared at the folder for several seconds after Ethan left the office. The thick stack of papers suddenly felt heavier than it should have. He opened it slowly and began reading. What he found immediately challenged everything he thought he knew about Naomi Carter. According to the report, Naomi had not grown up in poverty. In fact, her family had once lived in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Illinois. Her father had owned a successful logistics company worth millions of dollars. She had attended excellent schools, earned strong grades, and lived a comfortable life. Then, almost 8 years earlier, everything disappeared. The company collapsed following a series of legal disputes and financial losses. Her parents died within a short period of each other from illness. The family home was sold. The assets vanished. After that, Naomi seemed to disappear from public records. There were only fragments. Temporary jobs. Short leases. A change of address every year or two. Then, 2 years earlier, she appeared at the Moretti estate and applied for a housekeeping position. Vincent leaned back in his chair. None of it made sense. A woman with her education and background could have pursued dozens of different careers. Why choose this life? Why hide her past? More importantly, why had she never told anyone? He closed the folder and looked out the window. For the first time, he realized how little he actually knew about the woman he could not stop thinking about. The next morning, Vincent found himself searching for her almost immediately after arriving downstairs. He spotted Naomi in the greenhouse behind the main house arranging fresh flowers for an event scheduled that weekend. Sunlight filtered through the glass walls, illuminating the colorful rows of plants surrounding her. For a moment, he simply watched. She looked peaceful there. Focused. Content. Naomi noticed him and immediately stood. "Good morning, Mr. Moretti." Vincent nodded. "Good morning." Unlike their previous brief conversations, neither moved away. An unusual silence settled between them. Finally, Vincent glanced at the flowers. "You are good at this." Naomi seemed surprised. "Thank you. Did you always enjoy gardening?" She smiled softly. "My mother loved flowers. She taught me when I was young." The answer carried a hint of sadness. Vincent noticed it immediately. "You must miss her." Naomi lowered her eyes for a moment. "Every day." Something about her honesty caught him off guard. Most people carefully controlled what they revealed around him. Naomi simply answered the question. Before he could respond, another employee entered the greenhouse looking distressed. A catering company had canceled at the last minute, creating a problem for the upcoming event. Naomi immediately shifted her attention to helping solve it. Within minutes, she had organized alternative vendors and reassured the worried employee. Vincent watched the entire exchange. There was no panic. No complaint. Just calm competence. Once again, he found himself impressed. Later that afternoon, Ethan returned with additional information. "There is something else," he said quietly. Vincent looked up. "What now?" Ethan hesitated. "The medical bills you saw the other night were not hers." Vincent frowned. "Then whose are they?" Ethan slid another document across the desk. "Her younger brother. He has been receiving treatment for a serious condition for nearly 3 years." Vincent felt his chest tighten. Suddenly the long hours, the extra shifts, and the constant exhaustion made sense. Naomi was not simply working hard. She was carrying a burden nobody around her even knew existed. And for the first time, Vincent realized that beneath her smile was a story far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The information about Naomi's brother stayed with Vincent long after the conversation ended. For the rest of the week, he found it impossible to look at her the same way. Every time he saw her carrying supplies through the hallways, helping staff members solve problems, or quietly finishing tasks nobody else wanted to do, he remembered that she was doing all of it while carrying a responsibility most people would have considered overwhelming. Yet she never complained. She never asked for sympathy. She never asked for help. One afternoon, Vincent noticed Naomi sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the estate gardens during her lunch break. It was a rare moment when she was not working. She held a small notebook in her hands and appeared lost in thought. For several minutes, Vincent remained inside his office watching through the window. Eventually, curiosity won. He walked outside and approached her. Naomi immediately stood when she saw him. "You do not need to stand every time I walk into a room," Vincent said. Naomi looked surprised by the comment. "Sorry. Habit, I suppose." Vincent nodded toward the notebook. "What are you writing?" Naomi hesitated before showing him the page. It contained a list of monthly expenses, medical appointments, and reminders. The handwriting was neat and organized. Vincent noticed several numbers that seemed unusually large. Naomi quickly closed the notebook. Nothing important. Vincent knew she was protecting her privacy, so he did not press further. Instead, he sat on the opposite end of the bench. The action surprised both of them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Naomi smiled faintly. Most people would not expect someone like you to spend time sitting in a garden on a Thursday afternoon. Vincent found himself smiling back. Most people would not expect someone like you to know that. Naomi laughed softly. The sound immediately reminded him of the day he first saw her laughing with Ethan. The familiar irritation returned. Before he could stop himself, he asked, "You and Ethan seem to get along well." Naomi looked genuinely confused. "Ethan?" "Yes." She smiled. "He is a good friend." Friend. The word should have relieved him. Instead, it somehow created even more questions. Later that evening, Vincent received unexpected news. A luxury hotel chain in California had offered Naomi a management position. The salary was nearly double what she earned at the estate. The opportunity included benefits, housing assistance, and career advancement. The information reached Vincent through the estate manager, who assumed he would be pleased for her. Vincent was not pleased. He felt something sink inside his chest. For the first time, the possibility of Naomi leaving became real. The next morning, he watched from a distance as Naomi read an email on her phone. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that appeared when someone finally saw a door opening after years of struggle. Vincent immediately knew what the message contained. The job offer had arrived. As Naomi walked away toward the main house, she seemed lighter than usual. Hopeful. Meanwhile, Vincent stood motionless. He should have been happy for her. Instead, a single thought echoed through his mind. If Naomi accepted that offer, she would be gone within weeks, and he was no longer certain he was ready to watch her leave. During the days that followed, Vincent tried to convince himself that Naomi's future was none of his concern. He buried himself in meetings, contracts, and travel schedules, hoping the familiar rhythm of work would silence the growing uneasiness inside him. It did not. Every time he walked through the estate, he found traces of her everywhere. Fresh flowers arranged in the entry hall. Notes left for employees reminding them of important appointments. Small acts of kindness that most people overlooked but somehow made the entire estate feel alive. The closer her departure seemed, the more obvious her absence already felt. One evening, Vincent returned home later than usual and noticed lights in the staff office. Curious, he walked inside and found Naomi organizing paperwork into neat folders. Several cardboard boxes sat beside her desk. She looked up and smiled politely. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti." Vincent glanced at the boxes. "What are those?" Naomi hesitated before answering. "Just some personal things." His stomach tightened. "You already accepted the offer?" Naomi nodded slowly. "This morning." The room suddenly felt quieter. Vincent looked at the boxes again, as if seeing evidence that something important was slipping away. "Congratulations," he said. The word felt strangely difficult to say. Naomi smiled. "Thank you. It is a wonderful opportunity." Vincent knew she was right. The position offered everything she deserved. Better pay. Better benefits. A chance to build a future beyond endless financial pressure. Yet instead of feeling happy for her, he felt disappointed in a way he could not explain. "When do you leave?" he asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The number echoed in his mind. 21 days. Suddenly it sounded much shorter than it should have. Naomi noticed his expression. "I hope this does not create problems for the estate." Vincent almost laughed. The estate would survive. That was not the problem. The problem was something he still refused to name. "No," he said quietly. "You have every right to do what is best for you." Naomi looked genuinely grateful. "That means a lot coming from you." Later that night, Vincent sat alone in his office staring at the city lights beyond the windows. For years he had made difficult decisions without hesitation. Yet now he could not stop thinking about one woman leaving for California. The next afternoon brought another surprise. While walking through the courtyard, Vincent spotted Ethan and Naomi sitting together beneath a large oak tree. A folder rested between them. Naomi was smiling. Ethan said something that made her laugh. The familiar feeling returned immediately. Before he could stop himself, Vincent changed direction and walked toward them. Both looked up as he approached. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked. Ethan exchanged a glance with Naomi. "Not at all." Naomi closed the folder. Vincent noticed airline information partially visible inside. The reality of her departure suddenly became impossible to ignore. "Planning the move?" he asked. Naomi nodded. "Trying to." Ethan smiled. "She is nervous about starting over." Vincent looked at her. For the first time, he realized that beneath her excitement there was fear as well. Fear of leaving everything familiar behind. Fear of another uncertain chapter. As their eyes met, something shifted inside him. The thought of losing her no longer felt distant. It felt real. And for the first time, Vincent began wondering whether he had already waited too long. The final week arrived faster than Vincent expected. Every morning seemed shorter. Every evening disappeared too quickly. The estate continued operating normally, yet for Vincent, everything felt different. He found himself noticing details that once would have escaped him completely. Naomi's familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her quiet greetings to employees. The way she always stopped to help someone before helping herself. Soon, all of it would be gone. One afternoon, Vincent returned from a meeting and noticed several members of the staff gathered near the main entrance. Laughter filled the air. Curious, he walked closer. In the center of the group stood Naomi. Someone had brought a cake to celebrate her upcoming departure. Employees were sharing stories and thanking her for everything she had done over the years. Vincent remained at a distance, watching. What surprised him most was not how much everyone appreciated Naomi. It was how deeply she seemed to care about each of them. She remembered details about their families, their children, their struggles, and their dreams. As the gathering continued, Vincent realized something uncomfortable. Naomi had built meaningful relationships with nearly everyone around her. Everyone except him. That evening, he sat alone in his office, unable to focus on work. The realization continued bothering him. For nearly 2 years, she had been part of his daily life, yet he knew almost nothing about her. The following morning, the estate manager informed him that Naomi's last day would be Friday. Only 4 days remained. Vincent thanked him and tried to appear unaffected. The moment the manager left, he stared at the calendar on his desk. 4 days. The number felt impossible. Later that afternoon, Vincent walked through the gardens and spotted Naomi near the fountain. Ethan stood beside her holding a small gift bag. Vincent stopped behind a row of hedges without being noticed. Ethan handed the bag to Naomi. She opened it and immediately smiled. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and hugged him. The embrace lasted only a few seconds. It was simple, warm, and completely innocent. Yet the sight struck Vincent harder than he expected. For a brief moment, he felt as though someone had taken away something precious before he even realized it belonged to him. Naomi stepped back and thanked Ethan. The two continued talking while Vincent quietly walked away. That night, he barely slept. Every memory from the past several weeks replayed in his mind. Naomi laughing in the courtyard. Naomi working late. Naomi helping others. Naomi sitting beside him in the garden. Naomi preparing to leave. By sunrise, a truth he had been avoiding finally became impossible to deny. This was not curiosity. It was not concern. It was not simple admiration. Somewhere along the way, without permission and without warning, Naomi Carter had become the most important person in his thoughts. The realization should have brought clarity. Instead, it brought panic. Because for the first time in years, Vincent Moretti wanted something he could not control. And unless he found the courage to act, the woman he had finally learned to see would be boarding a plane in just a few days, leaving him with nothing except regret. Vincent spent the next 2 days fighting a battle that nobody around him could see. Logic told him to remain silent. Naomi had earned a remarkable opportunity. She deserved a fresh start, financial stability, and a future free from constant worry. If he truly cared about her, he should let her go. Yet every time he accepted that conclusion, another voice reminded him that some opportunities only appeared once in a lifetime. On Thursday morning, Ethan entered his office carrying several reports. One look at Vincent's face was enough. "You still have not told her." Vincent sighed. "Told her what?" Ethan laughed softly. "You know exactly what." For several moments neither spoke. Finally Vincent shook his head. "It does not matter. She is leaving." Ethan placed the reports on the desk. "Then you have even less time to waste." After Ethan left, Vincent tried once again to focus on business. Unfortunately, fate seemed determined to make that impossible. Around noon, he received a call from a medical foundation he occasionally supported. During the conversation, an idea formed in his mind. Within hours, he was reviewing information about Naomi's brother, consulting specialists, and arranging resources that could significantly improve the young man's treatment options. By evening, plans were already moving forward. For the first time in days, Vincent felt certain about something. He could not control whether Naomi stayed or left, but he could help solve a burden she had carried alone for years. Friday arrived. Naomi's final day at the estate. Employees filled the morning with farewell messages, photographs, and small gifts. The atmosphere was warm, yet Vincent felt increasingly restless. Every passing hour brought her closer to leaving. Shortly before sunset, he learned that Naomi planned to spend the evening with her brother before flying to California the following afternoon. The realization hit him like a deadline. If he did not act now, he might never have another chance. At 6 o'clock, a meeting with several major investors began downtown. It had been scheduled for months. Millions of dollars depended on it. Normally, Vincent would never consider missing such an event. Yet as executives gathered around the conference table, he found himself staring at a message on his phone. It contained Naomi's flight information. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours away. Suddenly the meeting no longer mattered. For the first time in years, Vincent stood up before the discussion even began. The room fell silent. One executive looked confused. "Mr. Moretti, are we postponing?" Vincent grabbed his coat. "Yes." "For what reason?" Vincent paused near the door. For years his answers had always involved business, strategy, or profit. This time, the truth was much simpler. "Because there is someone I need to see." Minutes later, he was driving across the city as the evening sun disappeared beyond the skyline. He did not know what Naomi would say. He did not know whether she would choose California or a different future entirely. But for the first time since she entered his life, Vincent was no longer willing to watch from a distance. And as he turned onto the street where Naomi lived, he realized that everything was about to change. When Vincent arrived at Naomi's apartment building, he sat in his car for nearly a minute staring at the entrance. For a man who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without hesitation, knocking on one door suddenly felt impossibly difficult. Finally, he stepped out and walked inside. A few moments later, Naomi opened the door. Surprise immediately filled her face. "Mr. Moretti?" she asked. Vincent smiled nervously. "I was hoping we could talk." Naomi invited him inside. The apartment was small but warm. Family photographs decorated the shelves, and several medical textbooks sat neatly stacked on a table nearby. Vincent soon learned they belonged to Naomi's younger brother, Marcus, who greeted him politely before excusing himself to give them privacy. Once they were alone, silence settled between them. Naomi looked concerned. "Is everything all right?" Vincent took a slow breath. "No. Not really." She waited patiently. For the first time in years, Vincent abandoned the careful control that usually governed every conversation. "I spent a long time believing I understood what mattered in life," he said. "I thought success was about building something powerful. I thought if I worked hard enough, I could control every important outcome." Naomi listened quietly. "Then you accepted that job in California." A faint smile appeared on her face. "That surprised you?" Vincent laughed softly. "More than it should have." He looked directly at her. "The truth is, I spent nearly 2 years not seeing what was right in front of me." Naomi seemed confused. Vincent continued. "I saw your work. I saw your professionalism. But I never really saw you. Not until recently." Her eyes widened slightly. "Vincent, please let me finish." He reached into his jacket and placed a folder on the table. Naomi opened it carefully. As she read the documents inside, tears immediately filled her eyes. The papers confirmed that a specialized treatment program had agreed to accept Marcus. Every major expense had already been arranged. Follow-up care, transportation, consultations, and support services were fully covered. Naomi looked up in disbelief. "How?" Vincent smiled. "Because someone should have helped a long time ago." She shook her head. "I cannot accept this." "Yes, you can." His voice remained gentle. "Not because you owe me anything. Not because I expect anything. But because you have spent years carrying responsibilities that should never have belonged to you alone." Tears rolled down her cheeks. For several moments neither spoke. Finally, Vincent said the words he had carried with him all week. "I am not here to ask you to stay because it would make my life easier. I am here because somewhere along the way, you became important to me. More important than I realized." Naomi lowered her eyes. "I thought you barely noticed me." Vincent smiled sadly. "That is exactly my biggest regret." A quiet laugh escaped her through the tears. "You know, Ethan spent weeks trying to convince me you were not as intimidating as everyone thought." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Weeks?" Naomi nodded. "He was never flirting with me. He was trying to help me understand you." For the first time, everything made sense. They both laughed. Then Naomi looked at him carefully. "What happens now?" Vincent reached for her hand. "That depends entirely on what you want." Naomi glanced at the California offer sitting nearby. Then she looked back at him. "For the first time in a long time, I think I want to stop running." Months later, the California job remained only a memory. Marcus's health steadily improved. Naomi began building a new future without carrying every burden alone. And on a warm spring evening in the estate garden where so many important moments had quietly begun, Vincent looked at the woman he had almost lost and said, "I spent years looking at the world and somehow missed the best thing in it." Naomi smiled before resting her head against his shoulder. This time, neither of them planned to look away again.